Over the past year, a number of things have been changing in the simulation space, and if you've been paying attention to the games coming through Steam Next Fest, the indie showcases and the early access titles, you probably have noticed all of this. So there's a new wave of titles that aren't at all focused on simplifying things for you. They don't want to automate the complexity of these games. They don't want to reduce everything to a single button presses, all these things that generally simplify games. Instead, what's happening here is they want you to engage with the title's systems, to understand why your ship handles the way it does, to feel the consequences of why your colony's budget doesn't balance, and to maintain the machine that's keeping you alive rather than just pointing in a direction. And this is quite a change actually. It's somewhat of a rebellion against the arcade approach that we've seen that's been developing. And all of this is happening across multiple games from multiple studios all at roughly the same time. Some of these are hardcore command sims, others are survival games or action RPGs with an unusual amount of mechanical depth. But they all stay roughly on the same spectrum, and that's a refusal to simplify. So today I want to look at 5 titles that are really focusing on complexity over simplicity, and why I feel this is a great direction for the genre. And this really because if the big studios are moving towards simplification, then the developers here are moving in the total opposite direction, and this is very good news indeed. So let's start with C-Beams. This is easily one of my most anticipated space games in the upcoming list of games, and the reason I'm covering this again, I've spoken about it before, is because it very much fits in with this theme, this ideology of complexity over simplicity, and it very much is the right direction for this type of game. So this is a top-down space action RPG, or perhaps a little bit isometric, depending on how you're looking at that. So the game has combat, it has loot, and it has progression. But underneath all of this is a structure that's all about physics. And this is physics in the way that you can't really ignore. The title is developed by Distant Light Games, someone that you'll likely know if you watch any amount of YouTube on space-related titles, because, that's YouTuber level cap. So whilst C-Beams is kind of framed and put out there as an action RPG, it's not really a typical action RPG. And that's because your ship, well, it's actually a physical object. It's not an avatar with stats. It means it's got retro burns for deceleration. You've got engines that you have to cut for silent drifting. You've got cargo that has mass, and this genuinely changes how your ship responds. Overload your hold and you'll feel it in every maneuver. Docking at stations isn't automated either. It's a skill you're going to have to develop if you want to do it right. So what's nice about C-Beams, and it's not out yet, it's still in development, but it does have a lot of active ongoing dev vlogs, YouTube videos that discuss where the game is and where it's going. And in these videos you also find that combat follows the same logic of all this complexity, and it's quite involved. So you've got subsystems, subsystem targeting. This lets you disable an enemy's engines, weapons or radar all individually, which means that every engagement you undertake can be really a tactical decision. It can be quite a focus on how you want to achieve your objective. In other words, it's not just about a damage race to the top or to the bottom. Instead, you can actually cripple a ship, you can dock with it and raid its cargo. And all of this is balanced against a range of different weapons, and you've got close quarter Gatling turrets and recoilless cannons all the way through to long range railguns and guided missiles. Now there's no confirmed release date on this just yet, but the pace of development is definitely visible and it's pretty consistent. We can see a lot of that unfolding over on YouTube, and I'm looking forward to getting hands on with this one. Perhaps one of my more anticipated titles, space game titles, for a very long time. And then we have SpaceCraft. This is a new game from Shiro Games. It's the studio behind Northgard, Dune Spice Wars and War Tales. And it's actually a common thread here amongst these games, because as a player you genuinely have to understand what's going on in these systems' mechanics, very little hand-holding. And so it seems that SpaceCraft actually has that philosophy applied to it. Although that said, it also appears that it sits at perhaps the more slightly easier end of that spectrum, but nonetheless it does have complexity layered there. So a real good example of where this game takes that approach is the ship design. So whilst you might usually be used to loadout screens that you optimize between missions in a lot of games, what happens here is quite different. Every component that you fit to your ship, whether that's weapons, mining equipment, cargo modules or anything else, It physically changes how the ship handles. Add too much weight and the ship will start to feel sluggish in every turn. Strip it back and you're nimble but then exposed. So the game recently confirmed a cockpit view. I know a lot of people have been asking about that because right now the camera is from outside the ship, from the rear. But a cockpit view will actually take things quite a bit further because it will actually feel like more of a genuine sim. Now, the interesting thing here is that the game is about far more than just piloting. SpaceCraft really leads you into building automated mining operations, managing interplanetary supply chains, and participating in what could be considered a player-driven economy. And that means that there's a lot of complexity here, layers of it in fact, and all interlinking together. Your ship effectively builds what resources you can gather, and then that in turn affects what and where you can automate, and that in turn affects what you can trade. So ultimately there's a lot of potential here. If you want to get hands-on with it, there is a demo available right now over on Steam, and I highly recommend you download that and check it out. After all, why not? Because these demos are completely free. Now moving on, we come to a possible one, Lunar Industries. So where SpaceCraft really applies a whole kind of systems thinking approach to the space sandbox, what happens here with this game is that you've got colony management, and this is built entirely on a real-world proven technology. So not plausible technology, not near-future speculation, but technology that exists right now or is genuinely feasible with current engineering. Now, I have spoken about this a couple of times before, but it bears bringing up again because it very much fits into the theme of this video, which is space-themed games which are focused on complexity rather than simplicity. So in Possible 1, you're running a lunar mining operation, and the focus here isn't between you and an alien threat or anything like that. It's actually about having a balance between the survival needs of your colonists there on the moon and the financial demands of a board of directors back on Earth, who ultimately are funding the entire venture. So that means you've really got to focus on housing, radiation shielding, as well as the psychological effects of low gravity and isolation of being up there on the moon away from anyone. And of course, this all costs money and resources. But if the board back on Earth doesn't see the returns that they demand that they're funding here, then they're going to cut your funding and shut you down. Ultimately then, what you end up with here is a game that is fun, but it's also a game that's built on the idea of the real world actually being complicated. Again, there is a demo available for this one. Do check out that over on Steam. Now, next up, we've got Atmosfar, and this one is, well, it's not a genuine space game, but it does have a very heavy sci-fi and space-leveled theme. And, well, ultimately it proves that it's not just about space either, this developing levels of complexity in their upcoming titles. So Atmosfar is a survival game. It's set on Tychos, which is an alien planet of floating islands. And at first glance, it might seem like a bit of an odd fit alongside colony sims and physics-driven combat and other such titles that we've got in this video. But what's going on here is that, well, the title is developed by APOG Labs, which is a Swedish studio, and this is important because, it underpins their entire focus, because their previous game is called Airport CEO, and it's a tycoon game that sold over 330,000 copies, and it's built on the entire experience around interconnected systems and driven management. In other words, it seems that they may be taking that learned complexity and applying it to a sci-fi themed game. So here, your primary vehicle is a cloud cruiser. It's a mobile airbase that isn't a static home you actually teleport back to. Instead, you pilot it, you manage its fuel, electricity and oxygen, upgrade its sections, and use it to support expeditions that grow more demanding as you push further across the planet. You also have some smaller craft known as wasps, and these each handle differently depending on which engine parts, hover sections and hull configurations that you've actually fitted. Now, in most survival games, your vehicle is transport, obviously, but here your vehicles are machines that you have to maintain and configure, and the way you've built them determines what you can actually do in the rest of the game. Thankfully, this also has a demo available right now, so if it sounds interesting to you, do take a look and perhaps check it out. And finally, we come to the game at the real far end of this spectrum. It's called Iron Nest. It's not a space game, but it's definitely a sci-fi inspired. This is a first-person diesel punk artillery simulator, and it's set in an alternate history 1920s Spain. Now here you operate a colossal walk-in turret, a battleship caliber weapon, and it's on, well, it looks like it's on spider legs really. And this one really goes for the heavy simulation, because every interaction with the turret with this mech is actually manual. You've got to decode radio transmissions, you've got to plot coordinates, you've then physically got to align the turret as well and then fire. So if you really like heavy simulated games, then this could be something worth keeping an eye on. And primarily because this is a pure uncompromising machine operation. So yeah, we've got 5 games here that come from different studios, different countries even, different genres as well, but they all share a similar conviction that players are certainly ready for more, that we'll want more depth, that we're tired of the simplicity in games, that we want more consequence, more systems to learn and master. And that, to me, appears to be a trend. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. As always, thanks for watching. Do take a look at the other video on the screen right here. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.